Welcome to Catholic Ed for All, your weekly insight into topics of special education in Catholic schools. My name is Dr. Raul Escarpio, and I invite you to join me each week as we learn how to be more inclusive in Catholic schools and continue to live out St. John Paul II's message of open wide the doors to Christ. Many thanks go out to RCL Benzinger, who is generously sponsoring this podcast. RCL Benzinger enriches the worldwide Catholic community by providing the most engaging and highest quality resources, programs, and services rooted in the rich and diverse tradition of the Catholic faith. And now, on to our show. On the show today, I am joined by Jeanne and Blair Loftis, founders of Oregon ICE, which stands for Inclusive Catholic Education. Why, hello, folks. Welcome to the show, and thanks for being here.
Thank you, Raul. We're happy to be here.
Yeah, Raul, we're really pleased.
I'm so glad you were able to join me. So before we get any further, can you please tell the audience a little bit about yourself, both of you?
Sure. This is Jeanne, and I'm an attorney by trade, but the thing that I'm most proud of is my 4 kids. I have kids ages currently 15 to 24. And we learned about 15 and a half years ago that we were going to be blessed with a child with Down syndrome. And it's been a wonderful ride with him for the last 15 and a half years, and we've learned so much from him. Part of our journey included deciding what school he should attend, and having followed 3 of his older siblings, we decided on the same school for him as the other kids. And when we approached our local priest about including him in the school, our priest was all enthusiastic about it and said that he thought there was no better reflection of God's love than a person with Down syndrome.
Amen.
So we were off to a wonderful start.
Amen. Amen again. I know I've said it like 3 times, but amen one more time. I totally agree. Blair?
Yeah, that was a special moment, Raul. The father was a wonderful man and really took a risk with Joey, and we're so thankful for that. I'm Joey's father of the other 3 children as well. Mm-hmm. And Joey's truly been a blessing by trade. I'm in renewable energy, and really our passion is this foundation that we've started, and we're happy to tell you a little bit more about that.
Fantastic. What kind of law do you practice, Jeanne?
I do civil defense work.
Okay.
And so I'm in trial a fair amount.
Oh, okay. So that's a good thing. So basically, no one can pull the wool over your eyes or anything like that. You know exactly what you're doing, which is fantastic for a foundation, because that way you can advocate when you need to. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So talking about that wonderful organization, can you share what led you both to founding Oregon Inclusive Catholic Education?
Sure. So when our son was included in our neighborhood church school, that was the first child that they had ever taken with the level of intellectual support needs that he had. And it was trial and error through the first 6 years that he was there. And then rather abruptly, after a change in priest and principal, he was asked to leave the school. And that threw us in quite a quandary of trying to figure out what to do. And through the process of prayer and meeting with other leaders in inclusive Catholic education across the U.S., we came across the idea of starting a foundation with the primary purpose early on to provide us for a platform to speak out about what had happened to us. We were not only disappointed for our son and our family, but we were concerned for the rest of the community, because Joey's absence from the school left a gaping hole that the other parents and students noticed. And through the formation of our foundation and working with others across the nation that have similar foundations, none in the Oregon area, but across the nation there are others, we were able to learn how important it is for the community to work to support kids and the faculty when there's a child with special needs, because it benefits everybody.
Yeah, when we started the foundation, Raul, we had three primary purposes as our mission. One was for advocating on the importance and the benefits of an inclusive platform for all learners within the parochial schools. The other was providing access to national experts on inclusive education to provide that sort of professional development for educators. And the third was providing resources and supports for those schools currently practicing inclusive education. We really didn't know what we were getting into. It's the Archdiocese of Portland in Oregon is really large. There's 15,000 students within the Department of Catholic Schools within this Archdiocese, 1,300 teachers, administrators, and staffs, 10 high schools, 42 elementary schools. And it, really encompasses more than half of the state of Oregon. So it was it was a big undertaking, and throughout the last several years, we've sort of evolved and refocused our mission based upon the feedback that we've been provided from educators and parents as to what they really need. So part of the journey was figuring out what sort of support people needed to advance inclusive education practices.
And I'd like you to elaborate on that, Blair. If we can talk about just basically your role in Catholic exclusive education, in Catholic inclusive education. How does the Oregon Inclusive Catholic Education support students like this?
What we've found is the best way to make an impact is to support the educators. And that was sort of an epiphany. We thought it was awareness. If we're Catholics and we talk the talk, we've got to walk the walk. We need to include everybody. And it should be simple. But we didn't understand that we didn't know how. It was pretty easy for us because we have a child with intellectual disabilities. But those who don't, or who haven't experienced that, really have no idea. So we found that providing access to experts in the field was the way that we could support the educators, provide them with the confidence that they could educate these students and they could do it well. So we started to hold seminars annually, and we've done 4 of them, and to bring in nationally recognized experts in the field of inclusive Catholic education to speak to our educators and help them understand the practical methods of curriculum modification, inclusive settings within the school, behavioral modification, providing them with the tools that they need so they can understand how to do this.
What we were learning is that this was mostly fear-based, fear of failure by teachers in the parochial system that didn't feel and didn't have the training that they thought they needed in order to succeed with including kids with special needs. And we wanted to address that fear straight on by providing them with support. Part of that fear that faculty has and others have is based on the fact that they've had very little interaction with people with special needs. And that's centrally why it is so important that our children get out in the world and are included in day-to-day activities alongside typically developing children, so that those typically developing children can reach out and include people with special needs, both at school and in businesses, and not fear those differences. And so the fear was very well understood. We understood exactly why they feared having people that are different in their classroom, and we just wanted to address that straight on with some education. And we've had Some amazing people come out on an annual basis to teach the educators, culminating this past year with 70 or so folks from 4 different states attending our all-day annual conference, hearing from experts in the field, and then also meeting with peer mentors who are providing direct support to high schoolers with special needs. So it's really come along quite well with this education component that we're providing.
Yeah, you fear what you don't know. And it was back in grade school that I had a wonderful teacher that was providing me a lesson on fear. And he said that back when the world was being mapped and the topographers had not explored areas of the earth, and they were drawing these flat 2-dimensional maps, at the end of the last piece of land that had been explored, they simply wrote, "There be dragons." And so, if you have the capacity to interact with people with different learning abilities throughout your elementary school, middle school, and high school, then you're not going to fear these people in your community as you become a young adult and a successful contributor to our society. Some of the educators that we've been able to bring to our annual conferences, and we've had 4 of them now since 2016, they've been guests on your podcast. So we've had Dr. Christine Bonfiglio from Notre Dame. We've had Dr. Michael Boyle from Chicago, Loyola. We've had Doreen Engel from Loyola University of Chicago. This past year, we brought in Dr. Erica Pearson, who's a local practitioner, to provide strategies for behavioral modification. And we learned that was one of the things that our educators needed most was assistance and some ideas on strategies to handle some of the behaviors that come with different learners. We also brought on some fantastic, more local celebrities that we like to call them. Karen Gaffney, she's a young woman who has Down syndrome, who's really an internationally renowned self-advocate. We brought in Beth Foraker from the National Catholic Board on Full Inclusion. Dan Sherman, the principal at St. Madeline Sophie School, who's done wonderful things at that school with inclusion up in the state of Washington. So it's been a fantastic opportunity to meet these heroes in the area of inclusive Catholic education and introduce them to our educators.
Fantastic. It sounds like you have a definite focus, if I can say it that way, because there's a lot of people who just talk about inclusion, but they only give you the hard part of it, which you have as parents. But unless you give them the sound resources that they need to make it succeed, then a lot of times it could be lost. But I can see with the heroes in Catholic education that you brought in that your focus is clear on the organization. So speaking of that, give me a couple quick special moments that you've had with your foundation, with Oregon ICE.
Sure. Early on, right after we started the foundation, when we were still struggling to find a Catholic school home for our son to go to, we wrote to Pope Francis and requested a meeting. Wow. And we got an interesting response. We got a photograph of him. But what that led to, I think, is an invitation to be involved in an international conference, which we attended at the Vatican. And through that process, we had the opportunity to hear from many wonderful folks, including Monsignor Gino Silva, who is now has a church in New Jersey, and he's a wonderful advocate for inclusion of people with special needs in church life, including schools. And we had the opportunity to meet with Pope Francis, and so it was a wonderful moment. Wow. For our family, including Joey. But what it led us to believe is that there are some really great folks out there who are firmly behind inclusion of kids with special needs in every parish school. and understand how vital that community is for a family raising a child with special needs. And so we feel like there's so much support across the world on this, that we're really moving in a terrific direction. Every year, it seems like more and more schools are understanding the importance not only to that family with a person with special needs, but to the whole community and how it enriches everyone's life to include all students.
Yeah, kind of a real guiding light for us was meeting Monsignor Gino Silva. We were sort of in a dark place when our son was kicked out of his parochial school. And we went to the Vatican. We attended the Jubilee celebration of persons with disabilities in Rome back in 2016. And there we met, at the time, Father Gino. And he was just such a positive influence. He listened to our story in such a positive and caring way. And, he had Pope Francis did a full Mass in St. Peter's Square that week. And he invited Joey to sit up at the altar.
Wow.
With Pope Francis.
How awesome.
And we've kept in touch with Father Gino. And I think that light was a turning point. That person, that inspiration. I wish I could take credit for it, but Jeanne and I listened to an artist at a folk festival, which sounds kind of funky this weekend, but he put it this way. He said that the Lord challenges us, and sometimes those challenges are suffering, which is our torch to bear. That suffering is our torch to bear. But with that torch, we have the opportunity to light the way for others. And so through our process, going from the dark place to the light place, in finding a home for Joey that was inclusive, it's provided us that opportunity to carry the torch and light the way for others.
Fantastic. I mean, what an inspiration, and just a confirmation from our Holy Father, and just, wow, it's amazing. So I'm going to move on to our last question because we're running out of time. I'm going to have you back because we can continue the conversation. So with that in mind, what should Catholic special education look like? And I want one of you to give me the perspective as a parent, and the other one as a person, as a founder of your foundation.
It should look like every other education, and our children should sit alongside their peers who are typically developing, and there should be no noticeable difference.
Yeah, I agree with Jeanne, and for me, I've always sort of sat pretty hard on this position that every child should have an opportunity for a Catholic education at their parish school.
And I would like to say this: the Catholics do a tremendous job of supporting people who are in financial need, and they raise just tons of money to help support the tuition needs of families that don't have financial resources. And I would love to see that same support, both emotionally and financially, for families that have children with disabilities.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I want to thank you so much for being on the show today. I have learned so much about your organization and you two as individuals. I wish you nothing but prayers and blessings as you continue this mission forward. And I just want to say God bless you and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Earl.
Well, that's it for this week. If this podcast was a blessing to you, can you please head over to iTunes and subscribe and give us a review or a rating? It really does help other Catholic educators find the podcast and use it as a resource. Thanks again to the amazing people at RCL Benziger for generously sponsoring this podcast. Check out their new resource for Catholic schools, Blessed Are We, Faith in Action, which enables teachers to share the love of Christ with children who have special needs. Visit rclbenziger.com to learn more. Join me again next time as we continue to advance God's kingdom by including all of God's children in Catholic schools and faith formation. Until then, this is Dr. Raul Escarpio. Thanks for listening, and may God bless your day.